Imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein said that. And it feels particularly relevant today because for decades, commercial supersonic flight, well, it seemed like history, right? Something confined to the past. But what if that's not the final word? Today, we're doing a deep dive into our source, Aviation A to Z, because it's hinting at something pretty huge. We're talking about a potential comeback for the legendary Concorde supersonic jet. Back in commercial skies, possibly, maybe, as early as 2026. Which, if that happens, is incredible timing right on the 50th anniversary of its first commercial flights.
It really is striking news. I mean, audacious almost. Anyone who remembers the original Concorde, well, its retirement in 2003 felt so final. We've had, what, 2 decades now of basically silence in commercial supersonic travel. So to hear talk of it returning and so soon, like 2026, you immediately think, okay, what's different? Because the first time around, it was amazing, yes, but it hit some serious walls, economic walls, regulatory ones. They just couldn't make it stick long term.
Exactly. And why now? That's our mission for you today. We want to unpack this whole saga. Where did Concorde come from? What were those original triumphs, those hurdles? And most importantly, what are the big changes, the innovations they're talking about now that might actually make this work? So by the end of this, you'll be, we hope, really well informed on this, frankly, incredible aviation story. It's complex, but fascinating. Okay, so to really get this comeback idea, we need to rewind back to the original dream. Concorde wasn't just a plane, was it? It was this huge symbol. Anglo-French ambition, redefining speed. Can you paint that picture? How did it even get off the ground?
Yeah, context is key here. You have to see it emerging from that post-World War II era. It was framed as a peace and cooperation project, actually. Officially, it kicked off with a treaty in 1962 between France and the UK. And the whole idea was, look, this is massively expensive, incredibly difficult technically. Let's share the burden. Let's build a supersonic transport, an SST, together. So you had British Aerospace and France's Aerospatiale working on the airframe, and then Rolls-Royce and Snecme tackled the engines, those powerful Olympus 593s. It was a real powerhouse collaboration for European aerospace.
A monumental effort, it sounds like, and a long road, too. First flight in '69, but commercial service didn't start until, January 1976. What were those first routes?
Yeah.
And what made flying it so special?
Oh, the uniqueness was definitely the speed and just the whole experience. Initially, you had British Airways flying London to Bahrain, Air France doing Paris to Rio. But very quickly, it became the way to cross the Atlantic. London, Paris to Washington Dulles, and of course, New York JFK. Think about it, crossing the Atlantic in under 3.5 hours. You could genuinely land local time before you'd taken off, cruising at Mach 2.04. That's 2,179 kilometers per hour, just blisteringly fast.
Oh, 2.04. Wow. Even now, that number is just staggering. An amazing piece of engineering. But as you mentioned, the commercial side, maybe not as smooth as the flight itself. Yeah. Despite all that glamour, what were the real sticking points for the original Concorde?
Right, and that's where technology meets, hard economic reality. Despite everyone being fascinated by it, Concorde never really made money. Not consistently. Only 14 production aircraft actually flew commercially just for BA and Air France. They kept cutting routes because of the losses, until really only the JFK routes were left as the mainstays. A huge part of the problem was the sonic boom. That, plus the noise on takeoff and landing, those environmental factors meant it couldn't fly supersonic over land in most places, which really limited where it could go, making it a niche and ultimately loss-making service.
So it captured the imagination, but wasn't alone in that supersonic race, right? There was another contender.
Exactly. You can't talk about Concorde without mentioning the Tupolev Tu-144, the Soviets' answer. Some in the West called it, rather cheekily, the Concordski. It was a symbol of their ambition during the Cold War, designed by the Tupolevs, father and son. And interestingly, it actually flew its maiden flight first, December 1968, beat Concorde to supersonic flight 2 in June '69. It looked incredibly futuristic when they showed it off in Moscow in 1970, a serious piece of kit.
So faster out of the gate, but it's operational life.
Yeah.
That was much rockier, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The Tu-144 story is unfortunately marked by some major incidents, most famously that terrible crash at the Paris Air Show in 1973. That immediately raised huge safety flags. It did start some mail flights in '75, even limited passenger flights in '78, but then another fatal crash happened that same year, and that was basically it for its commercial passenger service. I think it only completed something like 55 passenger flights in total before Aeroflot pulled the plug. Like Concorde, it suffered from high costs, range limitations, reliability issues. It just wasn't viable. But interestingly, later versions were used for research. A modified 2144LL even flew with NASA in the 90s. So even failures can push science forward, you know?
That's a really interesting point. Failure is data.
Yeah.
But for Concorde, its final chapter was also marked by tragedy, which ultimately kind of sealed its fate.
Yes, the definitive blow was July 25th, 2000, Air France Flight 4590. Taking off from Paris Charles de Gaulle, heading to JFK, it crashed just moments after liftoff. The investigation found this awful chain reaction. A metal strip, titanium, left on the runway by a previous plane. Concorde hit it, a tire burst, a big piece of that tire flew up and ruptured a fuel tank. Fuel ignited, massive fire, engine failure. It crashed into a hotel nearby. Killed everyone on board, 109 people, plus 4 on the ground. Just tragic.
That accident,
Yeah.
combined with, the fleet getting older, maintenance costs rising, and then the drop in air travel after 9/11, it really was the end of that era. Air France stopped flying them in May 2003, BA followed in October, and commercial supersonic flight just ended. For 20 years, that seemed like the permanent reality. So the big question remains, what on earth could have changed to even think about bringing it back now? What's the new plan?
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's not just dusting off the old planes. It's a complete rethink. It starts with a major policy change. June 6, 2025, apparently, at Washington Dulles, President Trump signed something called the Concorde Bill. This piece of legislation lifts the long-standing ban on supersonic flight over land in the U.S. That is absolutely fundamental. It removes the biggest regulatory barrier that existed because of the sonic boom concerns. It sort of signals the U.S. wanting to lead in this next-gen aerospace area.
The Concorde Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a significant development. So the path is clearer, legally, at least over the U.S. But what about the plane itself? Is Fly Concorde Limited planning to use the old designs, or is this something new?
The idea seems to be keep the iconic shape. People recognize that silhouette, but underneath, radically different. The focus is performance, yes, but crucially, sustainability. Big focus there. They're projecting it'll be 50% lighter than the original, mainly using advanced composite materials instead of the older metals. And here's the really big environmental leap. It's designed to run entirely on Sustainable Aviation Fuel, SF. They're projecting an 80% cut in carbon emissions because of that. It's not just tweaking, it's a ground-up redesign with sustainability baked in. It really shows they're tackling the original Concorde's biggest weaknesses head-on. Sustainability isn't an add-on anymore, it has to be core. Operationally, it'll also fly higher, around 60,000 feet, way above normal air traffic, and the aim is faster, quieter, and cleaner than Concorde Mark I.
50% lighter, 80% fewer emissions. Wow. That's not just an upgrade, that's a total transformation. And I gather the inside is getting a makeover too.
Yeah, the reports mention a minimalist Japanese aesthetic for the interior, designed by sustainable architects. Apparently, every aspect, cabin, propulsion, everything, incorporates the latest aerospace tech, lessons learned over decades of R&D. So definitely not just nostalgia. It's meant to be a 21st century aircraft through and through.
Okay, right. New law, lighter plane, cleaner fuel, new interior. But what about the elephant in the room, the sonic boom? That was the fundamental issue that led to the overland bans. How do you solve that problem? It seemed impossible for so long.
This might be the single biggest technical claim. The solution is credited to a Dr. Pano Kroko Churchill. He's the CEO and founder of the Concorde Company, based out in Washington State. Apparently a triple PhD from Oxford, an expert physicist. He's developed and patented just in May 2025 a technology for sonic boom suppression. The whole point is to allow this new Concorde to fly supersonic over land without that disruptive boom affecting people on the ground. If it works as claimed, it completely changes the game for supersonic travel, addresses the core problem. Patricia Bader-Johnston, who's the VP and Chief Development Officer at Fly Concorde Limited, really highlights this. She talks about setting a new global standard for boom suppression and sustainability.
A genuine game changer, potentially.
Yeah.
Neutralizing the boom.
Oh, wow.
And it's quite something, isn't it? That historical connection, Dr. Churchill being a descendant of Sir Winston Churchill, whose government was involved way back with the original Concorde project. So beyond the tech, if the original Concorde bled money, how are they planning to fund this ambitious relaunch? That financial piece is critical.
And here they're using a very modern tool, cryptocurrency, or rather a specific type. Fly Concorde has introduced something called Concorde Coin, ticker CSSC. It's a stable coin, which means basically it's a digital currency designed to hold a steady value, often because it's backed by real-world assets. In this case, Concorde's aviation assets and its future operations. The idea is to use blockchain technology, which is obviously huge now, to attract investment from people who believe in this kind of futuristic but also environmentally responsible air travel. So it helps fund the development, but also maybe build a community around the project. It's this interesting mix of high-tech aerospace and decentralized finance. Shows confidence that the market can back big visions like this.
A stablecoin backed by a supersonic jet. That is definitely pushing financial innovation. It really does sound like they're attacking this from every possible angle: legal, technical, environmental, financial. And the Concorde brand itself, it's still globally known, right? Valued apparently at around $50 billion. So this isn't just about being fast again. It's about making Concorde synonymous with luxury, yes, but also with environmental responsibility, digital savvy, and safety. A modern reboot. What an absolute incredible story we've traced today. From Concorde, as a symbol of sheer ambition, facing those early supersonic challenges. To now, this potential rebirth is maybe benchmark for sustainable high-speed flight. It's quite the transformation. It really feels like a blend of honoring the legacy while embracing completely cutting-edge ideas, like Dr. Churchill's sonic boom tech and that commitment to SAF.
Yeah, if you zoom out a bit, what this could mean for aviation, for technology globally, it's pretty profound. It's not just let's fly fast again. It's about tackling problems, environmental, economic, that grounded a whole class of aircraft before. Could this combination, the PEC, the policy changes, the new funding models, become a template, a blueprint for other big complex projects, especially projects that need to balance pushing boundaries with being sustainable and economically viable from the start? It definitely gives us a lot to think about regarding future innovation.
And for you listening in, I think the real value here is understanding all these different layers. You've got the history, the triumphs, but also the tough lessons, like from the 2144 or, tragically, from Flight 4590. And then you have these forward-looking elements, like Concorde Coin. It's about learning from the past to try and build something genuinely new. It's the kind of multifaceted topic that really helps build that well-rounded view of where things are heading. So, wrapping up our deep dive today, considering everything we've unpacked, the history, the hurdles, the incredible innovations being proposed, what do you think? What's the single biggest challenge this new Concorde still needs to conquer to really take off and create a truly sustainable future for supersonic travel? We hope this discussion gave you some valuable food for thought. If you found it helpful, please do consider liking and subscribing, and definitely share your thoughts or questions in the comments. We really enjoy hearing from you.